The flames swallowed everything Olivia Garrett had left of her husband in less than an hour, turning the small schoolhouse and her living quarters behind it into nothing but ash and memory on that scorching August afternoon in 1882. She stood in the dusty street of Linden, Kansas, her face smudged with soot, her morning dress singed at the hem, watching the volunteer bucket brigade finally give up as the last wall collapsed inward with a groan that sounded almost human. 3 years she had been a widow. 3 years she had poured herself into teaching the children of this prairie town, and now even that purpose had been stolen from her by a knocked-over lantern and unforgiving wind. "Miss Garrett, you cannot stay out here in this heat." Mrs. Henderson, the general store owner's wife, touched her elbow gently. "Come to our place. We will figure something out." Olivia could not find words. Her throat felt raw from smoke and unshed tears. Everything she owned, every letter Thomas had written her during their brief courtship, every photograph, every book she had collected, the quilt her mother had made, all of it gone. She had $23 in the small purse she wore on her belt, because she had been walking to the mercantile when someone ran past shouting about the fire. $23, and the clothes on her back. At 26 years old, she was starting over from absolute nothing for the second time in her life. The Henderson home was cramped but clean, and Mrs. Henderson insisted Olivia take her daughter's room since Susan had married and moved to Topeka. Olivia sat on the narrow bed and stared at the wall, unable to cry, unable to think, unable to do anything but exist in the hollow space where her life used to be. Over the next 3 days, the town rallied. The church collected donations, and Olivia found herself the reluctant recipient of charity, handed cast-off dresses and worn shoes, given sympathy and casseroles, offered temporary housing in spare rooms and attics. The school board met in emergency session and decided that classes would be held in the church basement come September, just 3 weeks away. But where Olivia would live, what she would do, how she would rebuild any semblance of a life, these questions hung over her like storm clouds that refused to break. She was sitting on the Hendersons' porch on the 4th evening after the fire, shelling peas into a bowl with mechanical precision, when a tall man rode up on a buckskin horse. He dismounted with easy grace, removed his hat, and approached the porch. Olivia had seen him around town before, always from a distance. Austin Quade owned a cattle ranch about 8 miles west of Linden, brought his hands into town for supplies once a month, and kept largely to himself. He was somewhere in his early 30s, she guessed, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that touched his collar. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-blue, like storm clouds over the prairie. "Miss Garrett," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I heard about what happened. I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Mr. Quade." Olivia set down the bowl of peas and folded her hands in her lap, uncertain why he had come. He turned his hat in his hands, clearly uncomfortable. "I have a proposition for you if you will hear me out." She nodded, too tired to be curious. "I have been needing to build a new bunkhouse for my ranch hands. The old one is falling apart, barely standing. I was planning to do it next spring, but I figure I could move up the timeline." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "What if I built a small schoolhouse instead, on my property? It is not far from town, and families out that direction have been asking for years about getting their children educated without the long ride into Linden. You could teach there, and I would build living quarters attached to it. Nothing fancy, but solid. A roof that does not leak, a stove that draws proper space for your things." Olivia stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because I can," he said simply, "and because it seems like the right thing to do." I have the lumber, I have the time before winter, and I have hands who know how to swing a hammer. You need a place, those children need a teacher, and everybody wins. I cannot pay you. I am not asking for payment." He met her eyes steadily. "I am offering help. If it makes you feel better, you can teach my nephew when he comes to live with me in the spring. His mother, my sister, passed last month, and the boy needs raising." There had to be a catch. Men did not simply offer to build houses for women they barely knew out of the goodness of their hearts. Olivia had learned to be suspicious of generosity, especially from men. But when she looked at Austin Quade's face, she saw no guile, no hidden agenda, only a quiet earnestness that was almost painful in its sincerity. "I would need to discuss this with the school board," she said carefully. "Of course. I already spoke to Reverend Morris about it. He said if you were willing, they would support the arrangement. There are 11 families out past my ranch who would send their children. That is more than 20 students, near enough." Olivia realized her hands were shaking. "When would you start building?" "Tomorrow, if you say yes." She should think about this. She should consider all the implications, worry about propriety, about what people might say. But she was so tired of being helpless, of accepting charity, of sleeping in someone else's daughter's bed and wearing someone else's old clothes. At least this would be work, purpose, a future built on her own efforts rather than pity. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Mr. Quade, I accept your offer." The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. "Austin, if we are going to be neighbors, you might as well call me Austin." "Olivia," she offered in return. He settled his hat back on his head and nodded. "I will come for you Friday morning. Bring whatever you have. You can stay in the main house until your quarters are finished. My housekeeper will make sure everything is proper." After he left, Mrs. Henderson came out onto the porch, barely containing her excitement. "Well, that is something. Austin Quade is a good man, Olivia. Lost his wife 7 years ago to cholera. He has been alone ever since, just working that ranch from dawn to dark. Keeps to himself mostly, but he is fair and honest. You could do worse for a benefactor." Olivia picked up the bowl of peas again, her mind spinning. She had just agreed to move to a cattle ranch owned by a widower she barely knew, to live in a schoolhouse that did not exist yet. It was possibly the most impulsive decision she had made in her entire careful, cautious life. And yet, for the first time since watching her world burn, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope. Friday morning arrived with a pink sunrise and the promise of another scorching day. Olivia wore the least worn of the donated dresses, a serviceable gray cotton that fit reasonably well, and tied her chestnut hair back in a simple knot. Her possessions fit into a single carpet bag that Mrs. Henderson had given her: 3 dresses, undergarments, a nightgown, a hairbrush, the small Bible that had been at the Henderson house, and the $23 she still had not spent. Austin arrived promptly at 8, driving a wagon rather than riding his horse. He helped her up onto the bench seat with a brief touch to her elbow, then set the horses moving west on the road out of town. The silence felt heavy at first. Olivia watched the prairie roll by, the tall grass golden in the August heat, the sky so blue it hurt to look at. Finally, she said, "Tell me about your ranch." "Quad Ranch," he said. "About 800 acres, though I only own 600 of it. The rest is open range I lease. I run about 400 head of cattle, mostly longhorns with some Herefords I have been experimenting with. I have 5 regular hands, plus seasonal workers during roundup and drives. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, came from San Francisco about 3 years ago. She keeps the house running and cooks for everyone. Her husband was killed in a mining accident, and she needed work. She is good people." "And your nephew?" Austin's jaw tightened slightly. "Jesse. He is 8. My sister Margaret was all the family I had left after our parents died. She married a gambler who drank himself to death 2 years back, and she tried to make it on her own in Kansas City, but the consumption took her. Jesse has been in an orphanage since June. I have been trying to get things arranged to bring him here, but it takes time. Should have him by April, they tell me. I am sorry about your sister. He nodded, his hands steady on the reins. Life out here is hard, takes people before their time. I expect you know something about that. My husband died in a farming accident, Olivia said quietly. We had only been married 2 years. His leg was crushed when a horse spooked and a wagon rolled over him. Infection set in. He lasted 5 days. She had not talked about Thomas to anyone in over a year. The words felt rusty in her mouth. That is rough. Yes. They lapsed back into silence, but it felt less awkward now, a shared understanding between two people who had loved and lost. The ranch appeared gradually, first as distant buildings shimmering in the heat, then resolving into a collection of structures. A 2-story main house painted white with green shutters, a large barn, several outbuildings, corrals, and what must be the failing bunkhouse Austin had mentioned, listing slightly to one side. Everything looked well maintained except that last building, the fences mended, the yard clear of debris. It was not a fancy spread, but it was prosperous and cared for. Austin pulled the wagon up to the main house, and a woman came out onto the porch. She was perhaps 50, Chinese, with her dark hair pulled back severely and an expression that gave nothing away. She wore a simple dark dress and an apron, and her eyes assessed Olivia with quick intelligence. Mrs. Chen, this is Miss Garrett. She will be staying in the guest room until we finish her schoolhouse. Austin jumped down and came around to help Olivia descend. Welcome, Mrs. Chen said, her English clear but accented. I have prepared the room. Lunch will be ready in 1 hour. The inside of the house surprised Olivia. She had expected rough bachelor quarters, but instead found a home that, while masculine, was clean and comfortable. The furniture was solid and well made, the floors swept, curtains at the windows. Mrs. Chen led her upstairs to a small bedroom with a single bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window overlooking the eastern pastures. You need anything, you ask, Mrs. Chen said. Mr. Austin is good man. You are safe here. After she left, Olivia sank onto the bed and pressed her hands to her face. Safe. When had she last felt truly safe? Not since Thomas died, certainly. Not since the fire. Maybe not since she was a child in her parents' home before illness took them both and left her orphaned at 16. Safety seemed like a luxury she could not afford. But here, in this quiet room with sun streaming through clean windows, she let herself imagine it might be possible. Over lunch, which was a hearty beef stew with fresh bread, Austin laid out his plans. I have been clearing the site all week. It is about a 1/4 mile from the main house, close enough for safety but far enough for privacy. I figure a building 30 feet by 20 feet, with half being the schoolroom and half your living quarters. A good stone foundation, plank walls, proper windows, a shingled roof. I will put in 2 stoves, 1 for each section. Should take about 4 weeks if the weather holds. That is very fast, Olivia said. I have good men and we will all be working on it. During the day you can help Mrs. Chen around here, or you can come out to the site and give your input on how you want things arranged, whatever you prefer. I would like to be involved in the planning, he nodded, as if he had expected that answer. Good, we start in the morning. That afternoon, Austin took her out to see the site. It was in a small clearing with cottonwood trees on 3 sides, offering shade and a windbreak. A creek ran nearby, close enough to be convenient but far enough to avoid flooding. The land was level and already cleared of the worst of the prairie grass and rocks. "I thought you might want the door facing east," Austin said, "to catch the morning light. Windows on the south for warmth in winter. The schoolroom should be at the front, your quarters at the back with a separate entrance. That way, you can have privacy when school is not in session." Olivia walked the perimeter, her mind already furnishing the space. Desks here, a bookshelf there, her bed against that wall, a table for grading papers, space for a trunk and her few possessions. It was more than she had dared to hope for when she watched her old life burn. "It is perfect," she said. "Thank you, Austin." He looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Just seems right," he muttered, and changed the subject to talk about where the well would go. Construction began the next morning with the arrival of Austin's ranch hands. Olivia met them over breakfast. Jake, a weathered man in his 50s with a gray beard and a gentle manner. Red, whose nickname came from his shock of bright red hair and who could not have been more than 20. Tom, quiet and dark-skinned, who Austin said was the best horseman in 3 counties. Carlos, who spoke Spanish and English interchangeably and had a laugh that boomed. And young Pete, who despite his name was older than Red and served as the crew's unofficial comedian. They were polite to Olivia, respectful but curious, clearly wondering about this woman their boss had taken in. She knew they would be watching, judging, deciding whether she was worth the effort Austin was putting in. She held her head high and thanked them for their help, determined to prove she was not a burden. The first days were a blur of activity. The men dug the foundation trenches and began laying stone while Austin worked alongside them, stripped to his shirt sleeves, his muscles working as he hauled rocks and mixed mortar. Olivia helped Mrs. Chen with meals, carrying food and water out to the workers, learning the rhythm of ranch life. In the afternoons, when the heat grew too intense for heavy labor, she sat in the shade and mended clothes or helped Mrs. Chen with preserving vegetables from the garden. In the evenings, after the hands had returned to the bunkhouse and Mrs. Chen had retired to her small cottage behind the main house, Olivia and Austin would often sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and crimson. They talked about small things at first: the weather, the cattle, plans for the school. But gradually, carefully, they began to share more. "Why teaching?" Austin asked one evening about a week into construction. "My father was a teacher," Olivia said. "Back in Ohio before we moved to Kansas, I grew up surrounded by books and learning. After he and my mother died, a family friend helped me get into a teaching college. It was either that or become a seamstress or a servant. Teaching let me keep something of my father alive, I suppose. You are good at it." "I think so. I hope so. The children in Linden seem to learn anyway." "I tried to make lessons interesting, not just rote memorization. History as stories, arithmetic as puzzles to solve, geography as adventure." She smiled, remembering. "Little Emma Paulson told me once that school was the best part of her day. That meant more to me than any amount of money." "You will have Emma and her brothers at the new school," Austin said. "The Paulsons live about 6 miles from here. Good family. I am looking forward to it." Olivia paused, then asked, "What about you? Did you always want to be a rancher, always?" "My father had a small spread in Texas, nothing like this. I worked it with him from the time I could sit a horse. When the war came, I was too young to fight, but by the time it ended, I was old enough to work a cattle drive. Made 3 trips up the Kishome Trail, saved every penny and bought this land in 1873, built the ranch from nothing. And your wife?" His expression closed slightly, but he answered. "Clara, met her in Abilene on my second drive. She was a merchant's daughter, pretty as a picture and too good for the likes of me. But she said yes when I asked, moved out here with me when we bought the land. She loved the prairie, loved the wide open spaces. We were going to have a dozen children, fill this house with noise and chaos. He was quiet for a long moment. She got pregnant in 1875. The cholera came through that summer. She was too weak to fight it, her and the baby both. Buried them on the hill north of here under the oak tree. Olivia's throat tightened. I am so sorry. Long time ago now. Does it get easier? He considered the question seriously. Not easier exactly. Different. The sharp edges wear down. You learn to carry it without bleeding all the time. But you never stop missing them, never stop wondering what life would have been like if things had been different. Yes, Olivia whispered. That is exactly right. They sat in the gathering darkness, two broken people finding solace in shared grief, and something shifted between them. An understanding, a connection, a recognition of kindred spirits. The schoolhouse took shape quickly. Within 2 weeks, the foundation was complete and the framing was going up. Austin proved to be an exacting craftsman, checking every angle, every joint, making sure nothing was sloppy or rushed. He explained his choices to Olivia, asked her opinion on window placement and door width, listened when she suggested adding a small covered porch to keep rain and snow from blowing in. You have done this before, she observed one afternoon, watching him plane a board to perfect smoothness. Built most of the ranch myself, he said, running his hand over the wood to check for splinters. Could not afford to hire it done when I was starting out. Learned by making mistakes and fixing them. It must be satisfying, creating something with your hands. He looked up at her, wood shavings caught in his dark hair. It is. Almost as satisfying as I imagine teaching must be. Different materials, but the same idea. You build minds, I build buildings, she smiled. That is a nice way to think about it. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, and Olivia felt something flutter in her chest. She looked away quickly, suddenly aware of how dusty and disheveled she must look after a morning spent helping Mrs. Chen beat rugs. The ranch hands had clearly noticed the growing ease between their boss and the schoolteacher. Olivia caught them exchanging glances and knowing smiles, but they were too respectful to comment directly. Only Jake, the oldest of the crew, said anything, and that was just a quiet comment to Olivia one day when she brought out lemonade. Good to see the boss happy again, he said. Been a long time. We are just friends, Olivia protested, feeling her cheeks heat. Jake grinned. Sure you are, miss. Sure you are. But were they? Olivia found herself thinking about Austin at odd moments, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the competent strength in his hands, the gentleness in his voice when he talked about his nephew. She looked forward to their evening conversations with an anticipation that felt dangerous. She had loved Thomas deeply, had mourned him thoroughly, but what she felt stirring in her heart now was different. Older, maybe, more cautious, but no less real. Late August brought a thunderstorm that lasted 3 days, turning the prairie into a muddy mess and halting construction completely. Everyone was trapped indoors, the hands playing cards in the bunkhouse, Mrs. Chen working on mending, Austin pacing like a caged animal, frustrated by the delay. On the second evening, with rain drumming on the roof and lightning illuminating the windows, Olivia found him in his study, a small room off the main hall lined with account books and a surprising number of well-worn novels. I did not know you were a reader, she said, running her fingers along the spines. Cooper, Dickens, Twain, even some Austen and Bront. Clara's books, mostly, Austin said. But I have read them all, some more than once. Not much else to do in the winter when you are snowed in for weeks at a time. Which is your favorite? He pulled out a copy of Great Expectations. This one. Something about the idea of rising above your station, becoming more than what you were born to be, always appealed to me. They spent the evening discussing books, sharing favorite passages, debating characters and plots. Austin had opinions on literature that surprised and delighted her, and Olivia found herself laughing more than she had in years. When the clock struck 11, she was shocked to realize how much time had passed. "I should let you sleep," she said reluctantly. "Olivia." He stood as she did, and they were suddenly very close in the small room. "I want you to know I am glad you are here. Not just because of the school, but because—" He stopped, looking uncertain. "Because I have not talked to anyone like this since Clara died. I had forgotten what it was like, having someone to share thoughts with." Her heart was beating too fast. "I feel the same way. You have given me back my purpose, my future. I will always be grateful for that." "I do not want your gratitude," he said softly. "What do you want?" He reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. "I think you know." Olivia did know, and it terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "Austin, you do not have to say anything. I know it is too soon, that this is complicated. I just needed you to know." He stepped back, putting proper distance between them. "Good night, Olivia." She fled to her room, her thoughts in chaos. She pressed her hands to her heated cheeks and tried to calm her racing pulse. This was madness. She had been here less than 3 weeks, was living in his house, dependent on his charity. She could not afford to develop feelings for him, could not risk the security he had offered by complicating things with romance. But she wanted to. The rain cleared on the 3rd day, and work resumed with renewed energy. Austin was polite but distant, and Olivia wondered if he regretted his words. She threw herself into helping with the finishing details of the schoolhouse, choosing not to examine her own feelings too closely. By mid-September, the building was complete. It exceeded every hope Olivia had dared to hold. The schoolroom was bright and airy, with large windows and a polished wood floor. Austin had built proper desks, 12 of them in 3 rows, each one sanded smooth and oiled. There was a slate board on the front wall, shelves for books, hooks for coats. The pot-bellied stove was positioned perfectly to heat the space without being dangerous to curious children. The living quarters were smaller but cozy. A rope bed with a corn husk mattress, a dresser, a small table and 2 chairs, a trunk for storage. The stove here was designed for cooking as well as heat, with a proper oven and flat top. There were curtains at the windows, cheerful yellow calico that Mrs. Chen had sewn. A rag rug covered the floor beside the bed. It was simple, but it was hers, and it was beautiful. "What do you think?" Austin stood in the doorway of her new home, his hands shoved in his pockets, looking uncertain. "It is perfect," Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion. "Austin, this is more than I ever expected, more than I deserve." "You deserve a lot more than a little schoolhouse on the prairie," he said roughly. "You deserve security and comfort and happiness. I hope this is a start, at least." She crossed to him, stood on her toes, and kissed his cheek. "Thank you for everything." He caught her hand as she started to pull away, his calloused fingers warm around hers. "Olivia, about what I said during the storm, I have been thinking about it," she interrupted. "Every day, every night. I have been trying to convince myself that it is too fast, too complicated, too risky. But Austin, the truth is, I have not felt this alive since before Thomas died. You make me want to hope again, to believe that maybe my life is not over at 26, and that terrifies me." "It terrifies me too," he admitted. "I swore after Clara died that I would never let anyone that close again, never risk that kind of pain. 7 years I kept that promise. And then you showed up, with your sooty face and your broken heart, and suddenly I could not remember why I had closed myself off. I cannot promise you it will be easy, Olivia. Ranch life is hard, and I am set in my ways, and I have 1,000 faults. But I can promise that I will try every day to be worthy of whatever you are willing to give me. I am afraid, she whispered. So am I, but maybe we can be afraid together. She looked up into his gray-blue eyes and saw the same vulnerability she felt, the same desperate hope. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Austin lowered his head and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, and nothing like the passionate kisses she had shared with Thomas in their youth. This was a kiss between two people who knew how fragile happiness could be, who understood loss and grief, and who were choosing to risk their hearts anyway. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Olivia said, "We should take this slowly." "As slowly as you need," Austin agreed. "I start teaching in 2 weeks. I need to focus on that, on building the school, of course. But in the meantime, maybe we could have dinner together sometimes. Talk, get to know each other better." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I would like that very much." Word spread quickly about the new schoolhouse, and families began visiting to meet Olivia and enroll their children. True to Austin's prediction, she soon had 22 students registered, ranging in age from 5 to 14. They would start classes the last week of September, giving Olivia time to organize her lessons and prepare the space. The Paulson family was first to visit, arriving in a wagon loaded with 3 tow-headed children. Emma, who Olivia remembered from Linden, shrieked with delight and threw herself at her teacher with such enthusiasm that they nearly both fell over. "Miss Garrett, I thought I would not see you again after the fire. Mama said we were too far from town for me to keep going to school, and I was so sad, but then Papa heard about this school, and here you are." Olivia hugged the little girl tightly, tears pricking her eyes. "Here I am, and I am so glad you will be in my class, Emma." Emma's older brothers, Michael and James, were more reserved but clearly excited as well. Their mother, Martha Paulson, was a tired-looking woman with a kind smile. "This is an answered prayer, Miss Garrett." Michael is 13 and should have more education if he is ever going to make anything of himself besides a farmer. And Emma loves learning so much, it broke my heart to think she would not have that chance. More families came over the following days. The Johnsons, with 5 children ranging from 5 to 12. The Weavers, the Mitchells, the Carmichaels. Some Olivia knew from town, others were new faces, families who had homesteaded in the farther reaches and rarely made the trip into Linden. They were universally grateful, bringing small gifts they could ill afford. A basket of apples, fresh eggs, a jar of preserves, a sack of cornmeal. "You are giving them such a gift," Austin told her after the Carmichaels left, their wagon rattling away across the prairie. "Most of these children would never get any formal education otherwise. You are changing their lives." "It feels good to have purpose again," Olivia admitted. "After the fire, I felt so lost, like the universe was telling me I did not matter, but this, teaching these children, it matters." "You matter," Austin said firmly. "Fire or no fire, school or no school, you matter, Olivia." She blinked back tears and squeezed his hand. They fell into a routine over those 2 weeks before school started. Olivia spent her days preparing lessons and organizing the schoolroom, decorating the walls with a map Austin had ordered from Kansas City, and arranging the books that had been donated by various families. Austin resumed his regular ranch work, riding out before dawn to check on cattle and fences, returning dusty and tired for supper. But every evening, without fail, he came to the schoolhouse and they had dinner together at her little table. Mrs. Chen cooked for them, sending over dishes that were a fascinating blend of Chinese and American cuisine. Olivia had never tasted anything like it, and found herself looking forward to meals with an enthusiasm that had nothing to do with hunger and everything to do with the company. They talked about everything and nothing. Austin told her about his childhood in Texas, his stern father and gentle mother, his adventurous sister Margaret. Olivia shared memories of her parents, her courtship with Thomas, the early days of her teaching career. They discussed politics and religion, dreams and fears, the future of the frontier and the changing world around them. And slowly, carefully, they began to share touches. His hand on her shoulder as he passed behind her chair, her fingers brushing his when he handed her a cup of coffee. A brief embrace when she told a particularly sad story about a student she had lost to diphtheria years ago. Each touch was precious, deliberate, a building of trust and intimacy. "I have not told the hands," Austin said one evening, about a week before school was to start. "About us, I mean. Whatever us is. What would you tell them? That I am courting you, if that is what this is?" He looked at her uncertainly. "I know we have not talked about labels or expectations." Olivia considered. "I think courting is accurate. We are getting to know each other with the intention of possibly building a future together. That is what courting is, right?" "I think so. Been a long time since I courted anyone." He reached across the table and took her hand. "But yes, that is what I want. To see if we can build a future together. I want that too." His smile was tender. "Then I will tell the men to mind their manners around my girl." "Your girl," Olivia repeated, testing the words. They felt strange and wonderful in her mouth. "If you want to be." "I do." The first day of school arrived with cool morning air that promised autumn was on its way. Olivia wore her best dress, dark blue with white collar and cuffs, and tied her hair in a neat bun. She was at the schoolhouse an hour before classes were to start, making sure everything was perfect. The slate board was cleaned, the desks arranged just so, the stove ready to light if the day turned cold. Austin appeared at 8, leading his horse. "Thought I would ride escort, make sure you are all right." "I am fine," Olivia said, but she was grateful for his presence. The students began arriving shortly after. Some walked, some rode horses, some came in wagons with siblings. They were shy at first, these prairie children, unused to formal schooling. But Olivia had been teaching long enough to know how to draw them out. She started with introductions, learning names and ages and interests. Then she launched into a lesson on geography, using the map to show them where Kansas was in relation to the rest of the country, the world. "This is where we are," she said, pointing to Kansas. "And this is where your parents or grandparents might have come from. Who has family from Europe?" Hands raised tentatively. Olivia had them come up and find the countries on the map. Germany, Ireland, Sweden, England. She told them brief stories about each place, made the distant lands come alive. By the time she dismissed them for lunch, the children were animated and engaged, chattering amongst themselves. Emma Paulson lingered after the others had run outside. "I missed you, Miss Garrett." "I missed you too, sweetheart." "Are you going to marry Mr. Quade?" Olivia blinked in surprise. "What makes you ask that?" "My mama says so. She says it is a good match, that you both need someone and you seem to fit." Out of the mouths of babes. Olivia crouched down to Emma's level. "Mr. Quade and I are getting to know each other. We are friends. Where things go from there, only time will tell." "I hope you do marry him," Emma said seriously. "Then you would not be so sad anymore. I do not like it when you are sad." Olivia pulled the little girl into a hug, her heart squeezing. "I am not sad today. Today I am happy because I am teaching again and you are here." The weeks rolled by and fall settled over the prairie in earnest. The cottonwoods turned gold, the prairie grass dried to wheat and amber, and the air grew crisp. School fell into a comfortable rhythm, and Olivia's students thrived. She taught reading and writing, arithmetic and history, geography and natural science. On Friday afternoons, she read aloud from books, introducing them to Treasure Island and Robinson Crusoe, watching their eyes grow wide with wonder. Austin came by the schoolhouse most afternoons after classes ended, often bringing small gifts: a crate of apples from town, new chalk for the board, a box of slates he had ordered for the younger students. Once he brought a globe, battered and old but still functional, that he had found in a shop in Topeka. "I thought the children might like to see the world round instead of flat," he said, almost shyly. Olivia threw her arms around his neck and kissed him soundly. "It is perfect. You are perfect." "Hardly," he said, but he was grinning. Their relationship deepened as the days grew shorter. They were courting openly now, and the ranch hands teased Austin good-naturedly, while the students speculated endlessly about whether their teacher would marry the rancher. Olivia found she did not mind the attention. For the first time in years, she was not just surviving. She was living. In late October, Austin took her into Linden for the Harvest Festival. The whole town turned out for the celebration, with pie contests and music and dancing in the street. Olivia wore a new dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her sew, a deep green that brought out her eyes, and Austin looked handsome in his Sunday best. They danced together as the fiddles played, and Olivia felt like she was floating. Austin was not a graceful dancer, but he was enthusiastic, and he held her like she was precious. When the music slowed, he pulled her close and said, "I love you, Olivia. I probably should not say it so soon, but I am too old to play games. I love you, and I want you to know it." Her breath caught. "Austin, you do not have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens, however long this takes, I love you." "I love you too," Olivia said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I have been trying not to, trying to be sensible and cautious, but I cannot help it. I love you." He kissed her there in the middle of the street, with half the town watching, and Olivia did not care. Let them watch. Let them talk. She had spent too long being careful, being proper. She was in love, and she wanted the world to know. When they finally broke apart, breathless and laughing, Reverend Morris appeared at Austin's elbow. "I take it there will be a wedding in the near future." Austin looked at Olivia. "That depends. Miss Garrett, will you marry me?" "I know I should do this properly, with a ring and a plan, but I cannot wait another minute. Will you be my wife?" "Yes," Olivia said, her heart soaring. "Yes, absolutely yes." The crowd that had gathered erupted in cheers and applause. People surged forward to offer congratulations, and Olivia found herself hugged and kissed and welcomed. This town that had seen her lose everything was now celebrating her new beginning, and the warmth of their joy was almost overwhelming. They set the wedding for mid-November, giving them enough time to prepare, but not so long that the weather might turn treacherous. Mrs. Chen threw herself into planning with an energy that surprised everyone, determined that the wedding would be perfect. The ranch hands built a bower in the main house parlor, decorated with the last of the autumn leaves and branches of cedar. Martha Paulson and several other ranch wives spent a week sewing Olivia a proper wedding dress, cream-colored silk with lace at the collar and cuffs. The morning of the wedding, Olivia stood in her little schoolhouse, now familiar and beloved, and put on her dress with shaking hands. Mrs. Chen helped her with the buttons and arranged her hair in an elegant twist, tucking in small white flowers. "You are beautiful," Mrs. Chen said. "Mr. Austin is very lucky." "I am the lucky one," Olivia whispered. She walked to the main house on Jake's arm, since she had no father to give her away. The parlor was packed with people: ranch hands, neighboring families, townspeople who had made the trip from Linden. And there, at the front of the room, stood Austin. He wore a black suit she had never seen before, his hair neatly trimmed, his eyes locked on her with such love that she nearly stumbled. Reverend Morris performed the ceremony, his voice steady and sure. Olivia barely heard the words. She was too focused on Austin, on the way his hand trembled slightly as he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, on the thickness in his voice when he said his vows. I, Austin Quade, take you, Olivia Garrett, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you and cherish you, to protect you and provide for you, in sickness and in health, in plenty and in want, until death parts us. You have brought light back into my life, and I will spend the rest of my days trying to be worthy of the gift you have given me. Olivia's own vows were equally heartfelt. I, Olivia Garrett, take you, Austin Quade, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you and support you, to stand by your side through whatever comes, in joy and in sorrow, in ease and in difficulty, until death parts us. You saved me when I had nothing, and you showed me that it is possible to love again. I will treasure that gift and you for as long as I live. Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Austin, you may kiss your bride. And he did, thoroughly and tenderly, while everyone cheered. The celebration lasted well into the night. There was food and music and dancing, laughter and toasts and good wishes. Olivia danced until her feet ached, talked until her voice grew hoarse, and smiled until her cheeks hurt. And through it all, Austin was at her side, his hand warm in hers, his eyes constantly finding hers across the room. When the guests finally began to depart, Austin led Olivia upstairs to the main bedroom, the one he had not let her enter during her stay. She understood why when she saw it. He had transformed the space. Fresh curtains hung at the windows, a new quilt covered the bed, and there were flowers on the dresser, late chrysanthemums that must have been hard to find. I wanted it to be ours, he said. Not mine, not a room full of memories of Clara. A fresh start for both of us. Olivia turned to him, this good man who had given her back her life, and kissed him. It is perfect. You are perfect. Hardly, he said again, but he was smiling. Their wedding night was tender and sweet and nothing like Olivia's first marriage. They were both older, more careful with each other, aware of the preciousness of what they had found. Austin was patient and gentle, and Olivia felt cherished in a way she had never experienced before. When they finally fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, she felt completely at peace. The months that followed were among the happiest of Olivia's life. She continued teaching, now as Mrs. Quade rather than Miss Garrett, and her students adapted to the change with enthusiasm. She and Austin settled into married life with surprising ease, learning each other's habits and rhythms, building a home together. Winter came early and hard that year, with snow arriving in late November and barely letting up through December. School sometimes had to be canceled when the weather was too severe for the children to travel safely. But on those days, Olivia found she did not mind being trapped inside. She spent the time reading by the fire, helping Mrs. Chen with baking and mending, and talking for hours with Austin about everything and nothing. Christmas was magical. They went into Linden and bought small gifts for all the students, simple things like peppermints and oranges and small toys. On the last day before the winter break, they held a party at the schoolhouse, with cider and cookies and carols. The children's faces glowed with happiness, and Olivia felt her heart might burst. At home, Austin gave her a beautiful leather-bound journal. "For your thoughts," he said. "You are always so busy taking care of everyone else. I thought you might like a place to write down your own stories." She gave him a new watch, silver and engraved with their initials and wedding date. "So you will always know what time it is," she said. and how long we have been together." They made love that night with the snow falling softly outside and the fire crackling in the hearth, and Olivia thought she had never been more content. January brought news that Austin's nephew Jesse would be arriving in April, earlier than expected. The orphanage was overcrowded and wanted to place as many children as possible. Austin was both excited and nervous about becoming a father figure to the boy he barely knew. "What if I am no good at it?" he asked Olivia one night. "What if I cannot give him what he needs?" "You will be wonderful," Olivia assured him. "You are patient and kind and fair, and he will have me too, remember. We will figure it out together." She began preparing for Jesse's arrival, working with Austin to fix up a bedroom on the second floor. They painted the walls, built a sturdy bed, and Olivia sewed curtains and a quilt in shades of blue and brown. She could not wait to meet the boy who would make their little family complete. In February, Olivia realized her monthly courses were late, then a week late, then 2 weeks. She said nothing at first, afraid to hope, but when she began feeling nauseated in the mornings, she could no longer deny the possibility. She told Mrs. Chen first, needing another woman's perspective. The housekeeper's face broke into a rare, wide smile. "This is good news, very good. Mr. Austin will be so happy." "I hope so. We have not really talked about children. It has only been 3 months since we married. 3 months or 3 years, baby is blessing." Mrs. Chen patted her hand. "You tell him tonight. He needs to know." Olivia waited until after dinner when they were alone in the parlor. Austin was reading through account books, and she was supposedly grading papers, but she could not concentrate. Finally, she set down her pen and said, "Austin, I have something to tell you." He looked up, immediately attentive to the seriousness in her tone. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. Quite the opposite, actually." She took a deep breath. "I am fairly certain I am expecting a baby." The account book slipped from his hands and hit the floor with a thud. He stared at her, his expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally pure joy. "A baby, are you sure?" "Not completely, but all the signs are there. I would need to see a doctor to be certain, but I think so. Yes." He crossed to her in 2 long strides, pulled her to her feet, and spun her around, laughing. "A baby! Olivia, we are going to have a baby," she laughed too, caught up in his joy. "You are happy then?" "Happy, I am ecstatic. I thought after Clara I would never get to be a father. And now Jesse and a baby, our baby. I cannot believe it." He kissed her deeply, then dropped to his knees and pressed his face against her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. Your papa loves you already. You and your mama are the best things that ever happened to me." Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she ran her fingers through his hair. This man, this good, kind, wonderful man, had given her back everything she had lost and more. She had a home, a purpose, a family. She had love. And now, a child on the way. It was more than she had ever dared to dream. The trip to see Doc Morrison in Linden confirmed what Olivia already knew. She was indeed pregnant, likely due in early September. Austin insisted on treating her like she was made of glass, despite her protests that she was perfectly healthy and capable. He wanted her to stop teaching immediately, to rest and take care of herself. "I am not giving up my students," Olivia said firmly. "Not until the summer break anyway. I feel fine, Austin, better than fine. I feel wonderful. But what if something happens? What if you get too tired, or one of the children accidentally hurts you? Then we will deal with it. But I am not going to spend the next 6 months sitting around doing nothing. These children need me and I need them." They compromised. Olivia would continue teaching, but if she felt unwell or tired, she would tell Austin immediately. The older students would take on more responsibility for helping with the younger ones, and Austin would check on her every afternoon without fail. Word of the pregnancy spread quickly, and Olivia found herself the recipient of endless advice from every woman in the area. What to eat, what not to eat, how to prevent sickness, which herbs to take, what to expect during labor. It was overwhelming and touching in equal measure. April arrived with warmer weather and Jesse. Austin traveled to Kansas City to collect his nephew, leaving Olivia in charge of the ranch with Jake's help. She was nervous about meeting the boy, hoping he would like her, hoping they could build a relationship. When Austin's wagon rolled up 5 days later, Olivia got her first look at Jesse Quade. He was small for 8, thin and pale with Margaret's dark eyes and Austin's stubborn chin. He climbed down from the wagon and stood there, a battered carpetbag at his feet, looking lost and afraid. Olivia walked over slowly, not wanting to overwhelm him. "Hello, Jesse. I am your Aunt Olivia. We are so glad you are here." He looked up at her, his expression guarded. "Uncle Austin says you are going to teach me." "I am, and about 20 other children who come to the school every day. But we are on spring break right now, so you have some time to settle in first." "Okay," he said quietly. Getting Jesse to open up took time and patience. He was polite but distant, clearly still grieving his mother and uncertain of his place in this new life. Austin did his best, but he was awkward with children, unsure how to bridge the gap. Olivia finally made progress one afternoon when she found Jesse sitting alone by the creek, throwing stones into the water with angry force. She sat down beside him, careful with her growing belly, and did not say anything for a while. Finally, Jesse said, "I do not want to be here." "I know," Olivia said gently. "You want to be with your mother. She promised she would not leave me, she promised." His voice cracked, and tears started rolling down his thin face. Olivia put her arm around him and let him cry. "I lost my parents when I was not much older than you, and my husband a few years later. And I know it feels like the pain will never stop, like there is a hole inside you that nothing can fill. But Jesse, it does get better. Not right away and not all at once. But slowly, day by day, you learn to carry the grief without it crushing you. And you find new people to love, new reasons to be happy. Your uncle loves you so much, and I love you too, even though we just met, because you are family now. You are ours, and we are going to take care of you." Jesse leaned into her, his thin shoulders shaking. "I miss her so much." "I know, sweetheart, I know." After that day, Jesse began to thaw. He started talking more, asking questions, exploring the ranch. He took to the horses immediately, and Austin began teaching him to ride. When school resumed after spring break, he was shy but engaged, and Olivia watched with pride as he slowly began to make friends with the other students. By June, Jesse was calling them Aunt Olivia and Uncle Austin without hesitation. He had filled out a bit, lost some of his pallor, and was starting to smile more. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous, and Olivia loved him fiercely. The summer months were busy. School let out in June, freeing Olivia to focus on preparing for the baby. With Mrs. Chen's help and direction from Martha Paulson and other experienced mothers, she sewed tiny clothes, knitted blankets, and prepared the nursery in a small room next to the main bedroom. Austin built a beautiful cradle from smooth pine, rocking it gently to make sure it worked properly. "Our child is going to be the most loved baby in Kansas," he said, running his hand over the wood. "Without question," Olivia agreed. Jesse was excited about becoming a cousin, though he worried sometimes that the baby would replace him. Olivia and Austin were careful to reassure him that there was plenty of love to go around, that his place in their family was secure. In late August, with the baby due any day, Olivia finally had to admit she was tired. Her back ached constantly, and she could barely walk without waddling. Austin hovered like a nervous hen, driving her slightly mad with his constant attention. "I am fine," she told him for the 100th time. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine." "You are my world," he said seriously. "Both of you. If anything happened, nothing is going to happen." She took his face in her hands and kissed him. "I am strong and I have the best possible care. Doc Morrison is on notice, Mrs. Chen knows what to do, and half the ranch wives in the county have offered to help. Trust me, Austin, trust us." Labor began just before dawn on September 3rd. Olivia woke to cramping pain and dampness, and she shook Austin awake. "It is time." He bolted upright, suddenly wide awake. "Time, now, already." "That is how babies work," she said, managing a smile despite the discomfort. "They come when they are ready. Send someone for Doc Morrison and get Mrs. Chen." The next 12 hours were a blur of pain and effort. Labor was hard, harder than Olivia had expected, and there were moments when she wondered if she had the strength to see it through. But Austin never left her side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement. And Mrs. Chen was calm and capable, knowing exactly what to do and when. Finally, as the sun was setting and painting the room in shades of gold, Olivia gave one last tremendous push and felt the baby slide free. A moment later, a sharp, healthy cry filled the air. "It is a boy," Doc Morrison announced, holding up the squalling infant. "A fine, healthy boy." Austin was crying openly as the doctor placed their son in Olivia's arms. She looked down at the tiny, red, perfect face and felt her heart expand impossibly. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." "He is beautiful," Austin said hoarsely, "just like his mama." They named him Thomas Austin Quade, honoring both of Olivia's late husband and his father. It felt right, a bridge between her past and present, an acknowledgement that love did not diminish love but rather built upon it. Jesse was allowed in to meet his new cousin that evening, and he approached the bed with wide, awed eyes. "He is so small." "You were this small once," Olivia told him. "Want to hold him?" She helped Jesse sit carefully beside her on the bed and placed baby Thomas in his arms, making sure he supported the head. Jesse stared down at the infant with wonder. "Hi, Thomas. I am your cousin Jesse. I am going to teach you all kinds of things when you get bigger. How to ride horses and skip stones and catch frogs. We are going to be best friends." Olivia looked at Austin over Jesse's head, and they shared a smile. Their family was complete. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Thomas was a good baby, healthy and generally content, but he still woke multiple times a night to nurse. Olivia moved through the days in a fog of sleeplessness, grateful for Mrs. Chen's help and Austin's unfailing support. When school resumed in September, just 3 weeks after Thomas's birth, Olivia was not ready to return. She hated disappointing her students, but she simply could not manage teaching and caring for a newborn. Austin arranged for a temporary teacher, a young woman from Topeka who was willing to live in the schoolhouse and take over until Olivia was ready. "Your only job right now is to take care of yourself and our son," Austin told her firmly. "The school will be fine. The students will be fine. You rest and heal." It was hard to let go of control, but Olivia knew he was right. She spent the autumn bonding with Thomas, watching him change and grow with astonishing speed. By Christmas, he was smiling and cooing, reaching for bright objects, fascinated by everything around him. Jesse was a devoted cousin, always wanting to help with the baby. He would sit and talk to Thomas for hours, telling him stories about the ranch and the animals, singing silly songs that made Olivia laugh. The love between the two boys was already evident, and it filled her with joy. In January, Olivia felt ready to return to teaching. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch Thomas during school hours, and Olivia gratefully resumed her position. The students welcomed her back with handmade cards and enthusiastic hugs, and she realized how much she had missed this part of her life. The years began to flow together in a tapestry of seasons and milestones. Thomas learned to walk at 10 months, tearing around the house at top speed and giving everyone heart attacks with his fearlessness. Jesse started helping Austin with ranch work, proving to have a natural talent with cattle and horses. Olivia expanded the school, adding more advanced classes for the older students and working with Emma Paulson, now a bright 12-year-old, to help teach the younger children. In 1885, Olivia became pregnant again, and this time she knew what to expect. Their daughter, Clara Margaret, was born in February of 1886, named for Austin's first wife and his sister. She was tiny and delicate, with Olivia's chestnut hair and Austin's gray-blue eyes, and Austin fell completely in love. "I did not think I could love anyone more than I love Thomas," he said, cradling his daughter. "But somehow there is room for more, always more." Thomas was a devoted big brother, though at 3 he did not quite understand why the baby could not play with him yet. Jesse, now 11 and shooting up like a weed, was protective and gentle with baby Clara, proving he had inherited Austin's capacity for tenderness. The ranch prospered under Austin's careful management. He experimented with breeding, improving his herd and expanding his operation. By 1887, Quad Ranch was one of the most successful in the region, and Austin was able to hire more hands and improve the facilities. He built a new, larger bunkhouse, finally replacing the one that had been falling down when Olivia arrived. "Remember when you offered to build me a schoolhouse instead of fixing this place up?" Olivia asked one evening, watching the construction. "Best decision I ever made," Austin said, pulling her close. "Changed my whole life. Mine too." On their 5th wedding anniversary in November of 1887, Austin took Olivia back to Linden for a celebration at the hotel restaurant. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch the children, and Jesse, now nearly 13, promised to help keep Thomas and Clara entertained. Over dinner, Austin pulled out a small velvet box and handed it to Olivia. "I never properly gave you an engagement ring. I think it is about time I fixed that." Inside was a delicate gold ring with a small diamond, simple but beautiful. Olivia gasped. "Austin, it is too much. It is not nearly enough. Nothing would be enough for what you have given me, but I hope you like it." She slipped it on her finger above her wedding band, and it fit perfectly. "I love it, and I love you. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible." He reached across the table and took her hand. "When I built that schoolhouse 5 years ago, I thought I was just helping someone in need. I did not realize I was building my own future, my own happiness." "You saved me, Olivia, just as surely as I saved you." "We saved each other," she corrected softly. They danced that night, holding each other close, remembering the harvest festival where they had first confessed their love. So much had changed since then, but the essential truth remained the same. They were two broken people who had found wholeness in each other. Two hearts scarred by loss who had been brave enough to risk love again. As the years continued to pass, their life together deepened and settled into comfortable rhythms. Jesse grew into a fine young man, graduating from Olivia's school at 14 and choosing to work the ranch full-time with Austin. He had found his calling with cattle and horses, and Austin could not have been prouder if Jesse were his biological son. Thomas was bright and curious, always asking questions, always wanting to know how things worked. He loved school and showed promise as a scholar, which delighted Olivia. Clara was sweet and gentle, content to play quietly with her dolls or help Mrs. Chen in the kitchen. The two youngest children adored each other and were rarely far apart. In 1889, Olivia became pregnant once more, much to everyone's surprise. She was 33 and had assumed her childbearing years were over. But their third child, a boy they named Daniel after Austin's father, arrived healthy and strong in December of that year, just in time to be their Christmas miracle. The ranch house, once so quiet and lonely, was now filled with the constant noise of children, laughter and arguments, tears and joy. It was everything Austin had dreamed of when he married Clara all those years ago, the family he had thought he would never have. On a spring evening in 1890, with Daniel toddling around the parlor, Clara playing with blocks on the rug, Thomas reading in the corner, and Jessie helping Austin with paperwork, Olivia sat in her rocking chair and marveled at the life she had built. 8 years ago, she had lost everything in a fire, standing in the street with nothing but the clothes on her back and devastation in her heart. And now look at her. She had a husband she adored, 4 children who brought her joy every day, a career she loved, a home that was warm and safe and filled with love. She had been given a second chance at happiness, and she had seized it with both hands. Austin looked up from his papers and caught her eye. "What are you thinking about?" "Just counting my blessings," she said. "And there are so many of them." He smiled, that slow, warm smile that still made her heart skip. "I count mine every day, and you are at the top of the list always." Jessie looked up, grinning. "That is disgustingly romantic, Uncle Austin." "Wait until you fall in love, boy, then you will understand." "I am never falling in love," Jessie declared. "Too messy." Austin and Olivia laughed, sharing a look that said more clearly than words, "Just you wait." Jessie was 17 now, handsome and capable, and it would not be long before some smart girl caught his eye. But for now, he was theirs, part of their family, and they treasured every moment. That summer, the schoolhouse needed repairs after a bad storm damaged the roof. Austin organized the work, but this time the whole community helped. Families whose children Olivia taught came out to contribute labor and materials. In 2 weeks, the schoolhouse was not just repaired but improved, with new windows and a fresh coat of paint. "You have made a difference here," Austin told Olivia as they surveyed the work. "These people love you. You are not just their teacher, you are part of their lives." "This place saved me," Olivia said simply. "How could I not give back everything I can?" In the fall of 1891, Emma Paulson, now a young woman of 17, approached Olivia about becoming her assistant teacher. Emma had stayed in school longer than most girls, hungry for education, and Olivia had taught her everything she could. Now, Emma wanted to give back. "You inspired me," Emma said. "Made me believe that women could do important things, make a difference. I want to be like you, Miss Garrett. I mean, Mrs. Quade. I want to teach." Olivia hired her on the spot, and Emma proved to be a natural educator. With her help, they were able to expand the school even further, offering more subjects and taking on older students. The little schoolhouse that Austin had built from lumber and hope had become a cornerstone of the community. As 1892 arrived, Olivia realized she was approaching her 10th year in this place, her 8th year of marriage to Austin. A decade since everything had burned, since she had stood in the ashes of her old life and accepted the hand of a quiet rancher who offered her a new beginning. On a cold January evening, with snow falling softly outside and the fire crackling in the hearth, Austin pulled Olivia into his arms. The children were finally asleep after much excitement and resistance, and they had a rare moment of peace. "Have I told you today that I love you?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Only 3 times, you are slacking," he laughed, the sound rumbling in his chest. "I love you, Olivia Quade. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you pour yourself into teaching those children. I love watching you with our babies. I love every single thing about you. I love you too, she said, tilting her face up for a proper kiss. You built me a new beginning, Austin, but you gave me so much more than that. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me yourself, and I fall more in love with you every single day. We built it together, he corrected. Everything we have, everything we are, we did it together. She could not argue with that. Together they had taken loss and heartbreak and turned it into something beautiful. Together they had created a family, nurtured a community, built a life worth living. The fire popped and sparked, and outside the wind howled across the prairie. But inside the house on Quad Ranch, all was warm and safe and filled with love. Olivia rested her head on Austin's shoulder and closed her eyes, perfectly content. She had lost everything once. And in losing it, she had found everything that truly mattered. She had found love and hope and healing. She had found home, and that, she thought, was the most beautiful gift of all. Not the schoolhouse with its sturdy walls and bright windows, though she treasured it. Not the ranch with its prosperity and promise, though she was grateful for it. The true gift was the man who held her now, the children sleeping upstairs, the life they had built from ashes and determination. The true gift was love. And it had been worth every moment of fear, every risk, every vulnerability. Because love had brought her here, to this moment, to this life, to this future stretching out before her like the endless prairie, full of possibility and promise. The widowed schoolteacher had lost everything in the fire. But a cowboy had built her a new beginning, and together they had made it into forever.